Today I want to inspire you to take up 3D printing and painting as a hobby, and I'm going to do that by showing you exactly how I painted this Magik sculpture designed by Abe 3D Studios. Let's get started with one of my favorite combinations in 3D printing and painting, and that is using a light metal dry brush over top of a black primer base. You can see what we're doing here is we're bringing out all those little tiny details on her hand and on her armor. It just looks so good. We're going to do the same thing with the sword here, and one little side note, it's really important that you try to get rid of any like marks from the supports and whatnot before you do that step, or else your dry brushes are going to bring out any kind of defect too, so just be careful with that. But one of my favorite techniques. Now here, this video is a little bit older. For those of you that follow my channel, I actually painted this one quite a while ago, and typically now I actually prime my models in pink, but in this case I actually had her fully assembled torso here. So we actually primed her in black. I sprayed all of her skin tones in white. In this case, like her face, I actually did prime in white, and I'm spraying with fuchsia pink. For those of you who are using the Atom skin tone, this is going to look familiar to you because I'm going to be doing the Atom recipe today. So you can see I'm doing everything in pink, but I sprayed everything white first. It's really important that you spray the pink over white. Now this step is completely optional. If you want to add some more subtle contrast to your model in terms of the skin tones, you can spray a red color into all of the crevices and shadow areas of your model. This is going to help create an effect. This is what's called pre-shading. So you're shading before you actually put your base colors down. This is a very common technique, and it is just another layer that's going to help add some visual contrast and make this model feel real, look real to your eye. Now, the way we do that is by adding layers. Anytime you want to make your model go from looking like a toy to looking like a beautiful work of art, you need to add layers upon layers upon layers of color. And you can see here we've already added pink over white and then red. And now what we're going to do is spray this with a base tone of warm skin. For those of you that are watching and you're like, hey, that's not ionic, well, I usually use Imperial Flesh if it's the ionic skin recipe, but in this case it's an older video from before ionic was a thing. I was still using Atom skin tones, and this is my old recipe. It's still a very good recipe, so if you already have the Atom recipe, you don't need to change the ionic. You're more than welcome to. But this skin tone is more of a fairer skin tone, whereas my ionic skin tone is very much so amped up on the contrast, so much so that I don't even do pre-shading anymore. So again, totally up to you. What you see I'm doing here is I'm just filling it in with a base color of that warm skin. It's just a base coat, but we're covering everything. We don't want any pink or red left behind. Now, we also don't want to flood the surface with that color because we don't want to ruin the pre-shading. We just want a thin coat. Now what I'm doing is I'm using this beige pink, which is a shadow color, a nice natural flesh shadow color, and I'm going over all those areas that I did in red earlier. So we're just enhancing some of that pre-shading and blending the edges, because now we're using a 0.3 millimeter needle and nozzle in this airbrush, and we're just spraying all those crevices, all the shadowed areas with this beige pink. Now the reason it's so important, as you see here, to do the shadows first is because we want to tone down that contrast with the highlight coat that we're going to do last. And we're essentially going to spray a zenithal with our highlights, and we're going to create highlight areas where there's like protrusions, or the skin is standing out where the light's going to hit it the most, and it actually will also help tone down some of the contrast we made with the shadows, like you saw there with her chest and with her abdomen. Now, if you're interested in any of the paints you see today, I do have them available on my store. I have the Atom skin tone set. I have the Ionic skin tone set. For those of you that are new, the Ionic is the newest version that Ammo's come out with of the Atom paint line. I also have these AK Quick Gen paints, which are a cheaper alternative to Citadel that work just as well. And then also we have the AK Play Markers. So plenty of products for you to choose from that I use all the time on all my models anymore. Now, this time when I painted black, I wanted to do something a little bit different. Okay, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but I just want to highlight for those of you who haven't seen my older videos, I've tried to do something to make black figures look more interesting. So one of the things I did in this case with Magik was I did like a satin finish to her leather parts to just give them that cool look. And then what I did was I used this gloss with a brush and I went over areas like these straps just to add some variety in the visuals and make it so that each individual part stood out. Because if I painted them different shades of gray and whatnot, it might look a little too much contrast. But look at how all I did was add gloss to certain areas, and you can actually see a difference. There's actually matte, satin, and gloss varnish all in this picture that you just saw. And it's incredible how you can just change the varnish finish between flat satin or semi-gloss and a gloss, and it completely changes the way black looks. And now that's also true for any color. So let's say you have a figure that's like blue or green or red, and there's like matte parts and there's plasticky parts. You can actually create contrast without having to paint multiple shades. You literally use the varnish. And you can see what I'm doing here is there's like this trim around her chest here. I'm just putting the gloss on it, and it literally makes it look like it's a different color black. It actually makes it look blacker just by adding gloss on it. And look how that turned out. I mean, it's just so beautiful how that turned out. It actually blew my mind, and it's like become my new norm for painting shades of black on a figure such as this. So if you want a cool, exciting way to make a black figure actually look exciting and not just be straight black, use different varnishes. Now for her X, you can see I painted her X white and then I painted it red. It's really important to paint red over top of white or a light color, or else it'll get lost. Red will not show up very well on top of black. For her hair, I actually primed this in like a flesh tone, and then I used a very light yellow to actually highlight the hair follicles, that or the individual hair, I mean, not the follicles, but the individual hair strands, using a dry brush technique. Now for her portrait, we're going to start with her eyebrows, which are actually like a brownish color because she is a blonde, so she's actually going to have brown eyebrows, not black so much in this case. So after we do that, we're going to do her black eyelashes. Now it's important to note that although this figure and most figures only ever show the top eyelashes being so pronounced, it's really important to note that you want to actually put the eyelash on the top and the bottom. Everyone actually has a thin set of eyelashes on the bottom of their eye. So make sure, as you see I'm doing here, put some black around the bottom of their eye. Now, I said this in other videos, and this is one of those where I actually did it a little bit backwards. I typically like to paint the white of the eyes, then do the black around, but it's okay. Either way works. But I'm moving on to the lips. As you can see here, I'm just using like a dark red. You can go with a more natural color. It all depends on what you like, but the important thing is you're painting lips that are not sculpted in a way to show you where to paint red or where it's flesh. So make sure you use reference photos and understand exactly where you should be painting the lipstick on. Now this step here is really important if you want to add some extra reality to it, is to actually paint in like the tear ducts on the corner of the eyes with like a light pink or like a coral color. I think I actually use coral for that color quite often. Now this step here where I'm outlining the eye in black is not something I typically do, but if I remember right, I feel like this model might have been one where the sculptor actually sculpted the eyes. I don't recall. You can definitely outline in black if you'd like to, but it's not necessary. You can just actually paint in, and as you can see here, I'm painting in like a greenish color for the eyes, and I'm starting with like a darker green, and then I'm going to work my way up to a lighter green. So remember, you don't want to just create a circle, you actually want to paint an iris that's not complete. You're painting like the bottom 2/3 of the iris, and the pupil should always be right towards the top eyelash. It's really, really important to do that because it's very realistic. Again, look up some references, and then you see I put a little speckle in her eye to show like the light shining off of it. And then the last step to finish off this portrait is to actually add some gloss varnish over the eyes and the lips, and that gives it an extra shine. Now that we have that out of the way, we can actually work on our base. Now this base is primed in black. You can see I'm dry brushing it in white, and it actually is supposed to look like a glowing lava, and there's a rock. So, well, how would I do that? Well, what I want to do here is I'm using this light gray or white dry brush to bring out the details of what I'm looking for, because I want to make it look like a rock, but I also want to add in some cool lava effects. And if you're going to add any kind of effects like glowing or whatnot, it's really important that you do it over a white dry brushed base, so you actually get some really cool contrast. Now I was kind of experimenting here because these AK Wargame fluorescents are actually an enamel. And just as an FYI, you can spray an enamel out of an airbrush, but if you do, make sure you have a mask on because enamel is toxic. You do not want to be breathing in enamel spray. It's not going to make you feel very good. And make sure you do it in a ventilated room, such as what I have in my studio. But you can see what I'm doing here is I'm mixing in some different yellows and oranges, and then I even bring red into it. You can see how it's kind of giving us an effect, and I was kind of experimenting, so you never know what might work, and a lot of times I'll experiment at my workbench with stuff like this, because at the end of the day, it's nothing that we can't either undo or fix. And like I said, it's all about layering. So you can see how I painted the bottom red, and the glowing bits around there are orange and yellow, and it's kind of making it look like it's a glowing lava base. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I feel like if anything, I could have dry brushed it in like a black on the outside to make it look like it was only glowing or from the inside. All sorts of ideas, but it's gone, so I can't do it now, but it looks cool from what I remember. Now I used the same colors for the sword, and remember I had it primed in white there, and I used the yellow to create that glowing yellow look, and then I'm using orange here just in the center to create that iconic yellow orange sword that she has. Now in the comics, there's different ways to paint the glowing sword, but in this case I actually made it glow under UV light. So what I'm showing you there is just shining it under UV light. If you were in a dark room and you shined UV light, or maybe you have like a UV light in your cabinet where you're displaying your models, it would physically glow, which I think is a really cool feature of the fluorescent paints, and it's something I love to do on models where I have to make things glow, and I don't want to run LEDs, or maybe it wouldn't look right with LEDs, so I really like how I did this. Now you can see I used a gunmetal then over top of the metallic bits, and then I dry brushed it with the same light metal. And there we have her sword, and that's how we paint Magik. I have plenty of content coming your way, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on these beautiful sculptures coming soon. I know so many of you have reached out to me on Discord and told me about how my work has helped you and inspired you in creating your own sculptures. So again, I hope that you come back, as I have something to teach you with every one of these models that I paint. I'd like to take a moment to share some information about my website with you in case you're a collector or maybe you're just new to the hobby. Check out my website at relentlessstormmodels.com, where you can browse a growing library of over 600 models to choose from. You can browse by the featured designers that I support over on Patreon. I also offer DIY kits and paint for those looking to get started in the hobby. Paint supplies are discounted 25% when you purchase a DIY kit. All the paint available is hand selected by me personally, so you can trust that it'll be easy to use and lead to a successful paint job. I highly recommend trying the new Ionic paint line, which are good for both brush and airbrush application. Users have called this paint the cheat code for painters, so don't miss out. I want to take a moment to say thank you to my patrons that support my work. If you're interested in some exclusive content, including daily vlogs and how-to videos, so you can get better at this hobby, head on over to my Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to extra content.